On this Sunday night, Canada's political leaders lay out their priorities. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre address their caucuses.
But it's about making life more affordable.
We need a budget to cut bureaucracy.
How they're setting the tone for Parliament's return. Another wave of deadly Israeli airstrikes hit Gaza as aid reaches some areas, while rallies in support of Israel in Canada focus on bringing remaining hostages home. 5 years after George Floyd's death, Americans reflect on what's changed and what hasn't. And controversial cull, why a bird flu survivor is speaking out to save hundreds of ostriches.
She went from 70% chance of survival down to 20%.
Global National, reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After nearly 6 months away, Parliament will get back to business tomorrow. Newly elected Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre delivered speeches to their MPs this afternoon, outlining their priorities for the upcoming session. As David Akin reports, Liberals and Conservatives may find some common ground.
Well, Neithu, it was caucus day here on Parliament Hill's West Block. We had 169 Liberal MPs meeting right here on the second floor, and 2 floors down, 144 Conservative MPs.
Both caucus meetings started with a little boasting. First, from a rookie Conservative who this week won a judicial recount by just 12 votes.
I'm proud to be a part of a party that won with 2.4 million more votes in the last election, 24 new seats, including myself.
And then an hour later, from the leader who led his party to one of the most remarkable political turnarounds in history.
The largest vote share for the Liberal Party in nearly half a century.
Liberals and Conservatives find themselves on the same page on many of the country's top priorities.
Our government has been elected to do nothing less than define a new economic and security relationship with the United States.
I've already told the Prime Minister that we are happy to cooperate any way we can to bring about an end to this unnecessary dispute.
They both agree on making it harder to get bail. They both agree on boosting defense spending. And they agree Canadians want action on the cost of living.
It's about making life more affordable immediately for Canadians, legislating that middle-class tax cut.
Conservatives want to tackle affordability too, but they will be pressing the government to present a plan to do that in a budget this spring. Carney has said he will not present a budget until the fall.
We need a budget to cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and corporate welfare to generate the savings for lower debt, taxes, and inflation.
Liberals also voted on this issue. Should the caucus give itself the power to fire the leader? Now, a party caucus has only one chance to assume this power at its very first meeting after every election. The Conservative caucus has given itself the power to toss the leader, if they so choose, after each of the last 3 elections.
But in the end, the Liberal caucus decided not to take up the power to be able to get rid of their leader, saying again, that's up to the membership. That said, there still are lots of Liberals who want more influence as a caucus to determine the path of government, to better balance the power of the PMO against the power of the caucus. Neithu.
Okay, David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Later, we'll examine why Canada is bringing in some royal reinforcement as it opens Parliament this week. Russia and Ukraine completed the final phase of a major prisoner swap today. Each side brought home another 303 soldiers. Over the last 3 days, more than 1,000 prisoners have been exchanged. Some have spent more than 3 years in captivity. Today's swap came hours after Russia bombarded Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, and other regions with a volley of drone and missile attacks. Those strikes, described by the Ukrainian side as the largest aerial assault since the start of the war, killed 12 people and left dozens injured. In Gaza tonight, the Hamas-run health ministry is reporting Israeli airstrikes overnight killed another 38 people, including a mother and her 2 children sheltering in a tent. It's difficult to get information out of Gaza, where hospitals are largely cut off in the northern part of the Strip. In Gaza City, there were more scenes like this today as residents chased after a convoy of UN aid trucks bringing in much-needed food and medical supplies. Some aid trucks are finally moving in, but authorities say it's a trickle compared to what's needed. Israel has been fiercely criticized for imposing a blockade on Gaza. There was plenty of vocal support for Israel around the world tonight as well. One of the biggest examples of that is in Toronto. The UJA Federation of Toronto says close to 60,000 people turned out for a walk to support Israel's efforts to crack down on Hamas and to bring back the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza. Security was tight at the event, and Toronto police say they arrested at least one person over death threats against the Israeli community on social media. Here's Julia Foy.
While thousands of people gathered in the streets of Toronto for the Walk with Israel, one man traveled here from his homeland to share his harrowing story of his escape from the October 7th attack.
At the moment we stop the music, and from heaven it's become to be a hell. And it's taking 7 hours to get out.
That day still resonates with many from the Jewish community.
We're all coming together to stand united. It's a source of strength, it's a source of comfort in what's been a really challenging time for our community.
I don't think there's ever been a more important time for friends and allies of the Jewish community to show up in great numbers, demonstrate the support what the Jewish communities had to go through.
Palestine will be free!
Several Palestinian supporters came out to protest the ongoing attacks and lack of support for those suffering in Gaza. Police officers lined the streets to keep both sides safe. Recently, Prime Minister Mark Carney, along with the leaders of England and France, warned Israel that they might bring down sanctions unless that country lifts restrictions on humanitarian aid to Gaza. The leaders also calling for Israel to stop its military operations in Gaza, describing the recent escalation of attacks as wholly disproportionate. In Vancouver, another walk with Israel got underway, with organizers passionate about stopping the hate towards Jewish people.
I feel mostly betrayed because we are not, as a country, Canada is not taking the right side here in the conflict, I believe.
Vancouver police were visible all around Sunday's march, which comes just 4 weeks after the Lapu Lapu festival attack. Back in Toronto, Kawavi says he saw lots of terrorists on October 7th and lost a friend in the attack.
But we survived, and we have a mission. We need to tell our story, to share our story, and to fight.
Julia Foy, Global News.
Toronto police are asking for the public's help to locate a man suspected of vandalizing signs outside 3 synagogues last week. Investigators believe the same individual may be behind a series of hate-motivated vandalism incidents last December. Police say he is middle-aged with a medium build and facial hair. He may be driving the gray Ford pickup truck captured in this CCTV image. Thousands across the U.S. are remembering George Floyd on the 5th anniversary of his death. Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis, was murdered by a white police officer. His death sparked worldwide protests against police brutality and racism, as well as calls for officers to be held more accountable for their actions. Candice Cole looks at how Floyd is being remembered and what has changed since his death.
This video, taken May 25th, 2020, shows the moments right before George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis, drew his last breath as Officer Eric Sorensen killed Floyd, kneeling on his neck for over 9 minutes.
Mama.
Floyd's horrifying fatal encounter with police, shining a spotlight on racial injustice and police brutality in the United States, igniting a groundswell of protests and demonstrations around the world.
George Floyd was a catalyst for change and recognition. And so what made apparent from his killing was that there was rampant racialized violence that was happening at the hands of police officers.
Over the weekend, communities and cities across the U.S. commemorated the 5th anniversary of Floyd's death with celebrations of his life and calls for a renewed commitment to racial justice, as people laid yellow flowers at the site where Floyd was killed, now called George Floyd Square.
When our nephew was killed, you know, there's two things that went on. People joined this change, became part of the change, but they didn't become the change. That's the difference. Because when you become the change, you become the movement, you become the change, and you become the voice.
Following Floyd's death, the U.S. Justice Department launched an investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department, which found that Black and Native Americans were being disproportionately targeted by police. In early January, Minneapolis and the DOJ agreed to enter into a consent decree, or court-ordered agreement, to reform the police department, something the Trump administration announced it would roll back last week. A setback, but not a deterrent.
With some of the recent changes at the federal level and some of the rumors around potential pardons and issues around the consent decree, you know, it's like an intentional reharming of the community, but that doesn't mean that we're going to allow it to break us.
The city of Minneapolis says it will continue to implement the reforms laid out in the consent decree despite the federal government's current stance. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
I believe in showing up. And I believe that when we do, we take a knee together across differences.
Residents of Montreal's West Island are remembering George Floyd's death as well. They held their 6th annual Take a Knee vigil today. The event is meant to show solidarity in the fight against systemic racism and call attention to improvements they want to see in Montreal's policing. A controversial cull battle in BC. Coming up, the teen avian flu survivor fighting back and a U.S. health official calling for more research. Efforts to stop a planned cull at a BC ostrich farm is getting support from unlikely places. The cull of about 400 ostriches was ordered after an avian flu outbreak among the birds last year. Since then, there have been calls to spare the flock, including from a powerful and controversial U.S. official. And as Travis Prasad reports, a high-profile patient who nearly died from the illness is also expressing solidarity.
Hello, hello. Hello. Oh my God, you guys showed up. Woo!
Pulling up to Universal Ostrich Farms in Edgewood, someone whose health troubles made headlines last year. This is Jocelyn, the teenager who landed in the BC Children's Hospital ICU after contracting H5N1 avian flu.
She went from 70% chance of survival down to 20% chance, and she's here.
Her family is now standing against the ordered cull of some 400 ostriches. They're speaking publicly for the first time, even as Jocelyn continues to regain her voice.
Let them live. They don't deserve to die. They didn't do anything.
Jocelyn's family says her blood is still being drawn by doctors to study the antibodies it now contains. They question why the same can't be done with the birds.
Do more research about it. Let the ostriches live so then research can be done.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency ordered the cull after avian flu was detected in 2 dead ostriches in December. The farm argues the birds have since achieved herd immunity and are healthy.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, has ordered the mass slaughter of the flock, citing outdated stamping out policies.
The farm also has support from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The U.S. Health Secretary spoke to the CFIA president on Thursday and sent a follow-up letter saying in part, "The United States government has been tracking H5N1 and studying it very intensely to prepare for a potential epidemic, including working on vaccines and studying the interaction between the virus and immune system. We believe significant scientific knowledge may be garnered from following the ostriches in a controlled environment."
These animals need to be retested, not just take a test and say that's all you're doing is one test and we're going to base it off that.
The CFIA maintains it has a duty to protect Canadians from the avian flu and says the cull will go ahead with no advance notice. Travis Prasad, Global News.
In North Korea, 3 shipyard officials are now behind bars after the failed launch of a naval warship. The 5,000-ton destroyer was damaged Wednesday when equipment holding it collapsed during a launch ceremony attended by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Satellite imagery shows the ship lying on its side and covered in a blue tarp, with parts of it submerged in water. Kim is blaming the incident on criminal negligence and claims it damaged the country's dignity. In Southeast Australia, a massive cleanup is underway after floods killed 5 people and inundated thousands of properties. Drone footage shows affected areas in the country's most populous state. Days of flooding cut off towns, destroyed homes, and swept away livestock. One couple, who was forced to leave a cow and its calves behind, was overjoyed to get some good news during an interview.
They were in about that much water, standing in water, and it was still rising. Okay, we've found the little boy calf. We thought we'd lost one in the water. We thought he might have drowned, but apparently he's there. She had twins in the water, in the mud.
Their other 2 calves have also returned safe after being discovered on a nearby highway. A historic royal visit next. King Charles will fly to Ottawa tomorrow for his first visit to this country as monarch. The king will deliver the throne speech, a task normally taken on by the Governor General. His mother, Queen Elizabeth, only did it twice during her 70-year reign. The last time was in 1977. The royal visit is being seen as highly symbolic, underscoring Canada's sovereignty. Eric Sorensen reports.
When King Charles stopped at Canada House in London on Tuesday, he was shown a large floor map of the country, a prelude to a visit that will demonstrate Canada's historic ties to the British monarchy and, more importantly, will symbolize this country's distinct sovereignty in North America.
This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
The King's presence will be a counterweight to Donald Trump's vision.
That is a it clearly underscores the sovereignty of our country.
Charles is going to be here as the King of Canada. We're going to hear that language a lot. I think it's to help remind President Trump that the King is actually our king, and it is a strong symbol of our sovereignty.
See the conflict.
There are signs that President Trump may be backing off the idea of Canada becoming a U.S. state after it was dismissed cordially by the Prime Minister.
Having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.
Trump has not taken a serious run at it since, even when promoting a joint Golden Dome defense shield. Washington's new ambassador suggests talk of the 51st state is over. He recently told B7 leaders he likes Mark Carney's description of Canadians as owners of the country.
The owners, okay? Really, they are the owners of Canada. It's a great way to describe the people that we work for.
In Ottawa on Friday, a group of U.S. senators said they just want to restore good relations.
There's been a lot of heartbreak about the disruption in that.
The group, including a Republican senator, talked only of trade, not a takeover.
We have a 5,000-mile long border. It's a long border. But our friendship is a lot longer.
Still, when Charles visits Canada this week, the world, including Washington, will be watching. Every gun salute, every mounted policeman, every waving flag will have greater symbolic meaning than usual. And having the throne speech delivered by the King himself, who is Canada's head of state, will send a clear message to Washington. We're not like you, and we will keep it that way. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada showcases the City Hall in Kingston, Ontario, a patriotic gnome in Winnipeg, and a bar in Pemberton, BC. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks so much for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night.